Wonderful. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Thank you so much for coming out this morning and joining us. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Michaela Nelson. I'm the PFA's 12th grade networking coordinator this year. And before we get started, I've been tasked with a few 12th grade reminders. First deadline is December 1st. I know you've gotten emails and you heard about it. Yearbook, if you want to buy it, December 1st. The ad, if you'd like one, December 1st. Everything else is December 1st. All the information is on the website, on the high school website, under student, and then the last one down here, yearbook. And if you go in here, step 1, 2, 3, all the stuff you need to do or you need to know about it. So that was my first reminder. What was the second reminder? Oh, when you put the baby pictures and send them all in the quotes, there's also a lambs to rams. If you do those photos, remember, for post-prom, we need the same kind of photos. So there is on the post-prom website, which is on the PFA website, events, post-prom. We also have a nice little video there now. Let's see. This doesn't go down. Here we go. Down here, the second line, second point, has an email, nchs20seniorvideo@gmail.com. That's where you're going to send also some lambs to rams photos. So we have a nice video going for the post-prom. Post-prom is May 15th, 2020. And the other date they told me to remind you of or tell you about, I don't know if that was set earlier, Friday, March 27th, 2020 is a big fundraiser, a really fun event, the Ram Jam. They started that last year. We have a big sign-up. Sorry. This morning.
That's some water.
Yeah, thank you. Started this morning, but I hope that's all okay. Sign-ups for post-prom. If you have signed up already, we have additional ones over there, but if your name, if you don't remember what you signed up for, or if you signed up, the name of the list is also over there. But we need Ram Jam now. There's an additional sign-up sheet right over there. Excuse me. And I think that was it on the reminders that people told me about. Last reminder, sorry. Down here, number 4, Boone Supplies, that's December 13th. And December 13th is when that is over. That's when you buy Christmas gifts. We get 40% for post-prom. So, in case you're interested. And those were my reminders. Now let me introduce to you our new high school senior internship coordinator, Heather Bianco, who is here accompanied by Ari Rossman, our assistant principal. And they will give us an overview on the senior internship program today. Followed by, back by popular demand, Tracy Masella. Tracy is an expert in adolescent mental health affiliated with Silver Hill.
Nice.
She'll give us pointers how to help our seniors cope with the challenging college decision process. So the presentation is called Decisions, Decisions, Decisions. Thank you very much, and happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Heather Bianco. Hopefully you've gotten, I think I've sent 3 or 4 emails to the parents. If you're not getting them, by the way, check your email with central office, because I've probably sent 3 or 4, and I had a parent call me that was not receiving them, and that their email was actually incorrect in the system. So if you have that issue, call central office and make sure your correct emails in Power School. Okay. So the internship program is optional. It starts after AP testing. Your child's grades will be frozen the day before the internship starts. So this year, the dates are May 18th through June 11th. June 11th is a Thursday. So this year, we actually know the end date, being that the graduation date we already know. So that's actually very helpful. The actual internship starts May 19th. May 18th, all the students are going to come to school and we'll have a workshop in the morning. We usually split them up, there's 300 students, so we split them up, and they'll have all that information. Usually it's 8 a.m. and I think the next meeting's at 10 a.m. But again, you'll all receive information about that, and your seniors as well. The application period is actually now through December 16th. The application is basically a essay of, why they want to do it, what they hope to gain from it, what skills can they bring from it. I did actually email out the essay so they knew ahead of time what it would be the first week of October. We're just looking for a thoughtful response. It's nothing that the kids should stress out about. It's a 250-word essay. I've already had about, 30 kids already complete it and get it done. And other than that, in the portal, they write the application. They all have received their login information on November 12th. So if your child has not checked their email, please go home tonight and make sure they've checked their email. If they can't find it, let me know. I'll be happy to resend it. It doesn't come from me. It actually comes from the portal, so it's a very generic-looking email. It will say New Canaan Senior Internship Program. Besides the essay, they also can pick different categories, whether it's engineering or medical, or, we have probably about 30, 40 categories they can choose from. Once that is done, all the essays are done, then on December 17th, the students go back into the portal, and that's when they see all the internships and descriptions, and they can actually filter it. So they can, different categories. So it's not just one big, long list. They can kind of go through and decide what they want. We ask them to pick a minimum of 10. They can pick 20, 30. I don't care as long as there's a minimum of 10. In addition, if your student does not want to use the internships we have, we do offer something called self-design. So self-design, I believe I've sent information out, and you also can find it on the home webpage. It's under school counseling. But self-design is, we want to keep it as close as possible, 15, 20-mile radius. Some might be a little bit further. Come talk to me if there's something a little bit further. The student needs to get approval from that internship site before they hand their paperwork in to me. There's two documents basically. One that the company signs off stating that they're not going to pay them, they're not an employee, they're not a family member, and then the same type of document for the student. So for us to review that, I would need those two pieces of paper. Right now we have the deadline set for January 7th. To be honest with you, we'll probably have that deadline every year. We always extend that deadline probably to mid-January. So it is important if there is something you think, especially medical, I can tell you is very hard for us to get due to HIPAA laws. So if your child is interested in medical and of a doctor that's willing to have them intern, that's probably the best bet for self-design. Usually we have a lot of physical therapy. We have a couple doctors. I think we'll actually have one this year, ear, nose, and throat. But it's hard. It's very hard with medical. We do have another one, I should say, HSS Rehab through Stanford Hospital. So as for self-design, I'm just going through my list here. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of talk about the process. So after the students pick their 10 internships, the month of January we dedicate to interviewing all the 300 students. So basically, your student will sit down with 2 members of the SIP committee. So there's 18 people on the committee, and no, we're not all 18 of us are going to interview your child. There's just 2 of us. And it'll be a 15, 20-minute interview. We discuss their essay. We discuss their choices. We ask them why. And they actually rank them in the order they want. So that's the other thing. We'll go through their top rankings to discover why they want this, read their essay. And, obviously we ask them interview questions as well. After that, in February, by the second week of February usually, the committee will sit down and we'll go through all the data we have for 300 students. It might be a little bit less if some kids are going to self-design, obviously. And we'll make the decisions of who goes where. It's 99% of the time it's something out of their 10, their choices. And everyone always asks me, what are the stats on that? So here are some stats from last year. So last year we actually had about 50 kids self-design. So we had 249 students that went through the actual process. So 65% received their first choice, 14% received their second choice, 6% received their third choice, and 15% received fourth choice or lower. So those are some stats from last year. The other thing I failed to say is Any kids that are going to self-design, they still go through the interview process with us. Being that sometimes self-designs fall through for whatever reason, we always like to have a backup plan. Just in case it falls through, we will then document places that your child would like to intern besides their self-design. The other things I can tell you, we do have 2 workshops that are mandatory. And again, this is all sent to you. We have one in March and one in May. One really goes through workplace etiquette, sexual harassment, email etiquette. I have a long list here of things we talk about. Dress code, communication with your manager. And the way we run that is, it's actually in here. It's broken into 2 groups. We have about 10, 12 kids at a table, and one person on our committee actually runs through it and kind of runs the workshop. We found that better because obviously, 150 kids, you're trying to talk to them. So we have small groups. We kind of go through that. We also have Ben Carpenter, who wrote the book, The Bigs. He comes in to speak to the students. All the students get a copy of the book. And we also have a couple of companies come in. A local person's going to come in this year, Ryan Lee, he's an entrepreneur, and he's going to talk to the kids about his career. And then we also have a LinkedIn workshop that we do. I understand if some parents don't want their child to have a LinkedIn account, that's perfectly fine. We just ask that they go through the LinkedIn workshop. We have someone from the New Canaan Library actually run the workshop, and it's fantastic. So that's about it. And we also do resume and cover letter building as well. So we do run some workshops as well throughout the year. Again, it's usually done the day, I think it's the junior testing, right, in March? So it's not going to take away from their classes. And the other one's May 18th is actually when the internship starts. So they'll just come to school for that 2 hours, and then the next day, the May 19th, they'll go out on their internship. I am going to ask Ari just to speak to the requirements, so you understand the requirements for the program as far as grades and attendance.
Heather gave me a script I have to follow. One thing I do want to say, as a parent in an adjacent community whose sons went through an internship program there, what I'm most proud of is that ours really focuses on giving kids, and I use this word intentionally, a valid experience. My younger son set something up where he basically raked leaves, did some gardening around a tennis court with a guy that he took lessons with. And while it was wonderful for him, there was absolutely nothing of value that he actually learned or developed as he then went off to college and then into the world of work. So there's a number of expectations, because we really try and make this as much of an educational and preparatory program as just simply a work experience. To that end, even the question about, signing off that kids are not getting paid. There are very specific laws in the state of Connecticut about student internships. And so what is required is that a school give credit for an internship. Ours is a nominal quarter credit. It is never the make or break for a student graduating, but it's something that we give because we're also asking a lot of the students in terms of their preparation, their participation. To that end, as a school, we're still responsible for them till the day of graduation, through the day of graduation. And so we expect that they will attend and do the work that is set out for them in their internships. It is almost never a problem, but we as a school have to monitor and make sure they're actually doing what they're supposed to do. And so that's really, why it's important. It's important that for the however many days of the internship, as best as humanly possible, they not miss work. So ideally, they're not scheduling doctor's appointments unless it is absolutely, truly unavoidable. They shouldn't go on college visits during that period. It's a simple number of days and hours, and our commitment to the sites that host them is really that they will show up and do good work. So we really require and this is something as parents we really need your help with, to please don't schedule things during that time, as best as humanly possible. And that's really it. Did I cover? Let me check my list.
Just as far as grades, and then attendance, and good standing.
Well, we don't worry about grades here at the school. It's not an issue. Not an issue. I'm checking my list. This was given to me. Let me speak as last year I was the administrator for the senior class. We want a kid to graduate, obviously. We don't want there to be anything that gets in the way of that graduation. So if a student heading into senior year is in danger of not graduating, and that's a discussion that will have already taken place with the school counselor, obviously, we're going to recommend very, very strongly that they don't participate in the internship program. If they need those second semester classes, they need to do their best possible work. That's the only time we'll keep a kid from it. There's a handful of kids, and a very small handful of kids, who will choose not to be a part of it for whatever reason. And they continue and they do, they finish out their second semester classes. But the only time we're going to, as a school, stop a kid from participating is if there is a question that they're not going to graduate. We freeze grades at that point. If a kid is failing English, for instance, or something else that they need to graduate, because our primary goal is to have them graduate, that would be the only reason we would stop a kid. But otherwise, we encourage everybody to do it. I think it's a great experience. As I say to the kids, being one of these table facilitators, if you can walk out of this experience, regardless of the actual skills you will pick up, and be able to have a reference who will speak to your responsibility, your hard work, your integrity, that's gold. And that, as we have found out in talking to kids after the fact, that becomes even something that they can refer to in applying for a campus job at college. It's one more reference. And in some cases, it does turn into a summer opportunity in terms of a job or continued experience. So again, we've had, I think 5 years ago, maybe we had about 20% of the class. We're now at a point where last year, I think all but 8 or 9 kids in the entire senior class participated. And it's really a very, very worthwhile experience that kids get a lot out of. And the process that Heather described really is a matchmaking process, helping kids just sort of define some interests, what would be a possible, that they might want to try, and then making sure we set them up for as much success as possible. Is that okay? Did
That
I
was
cover everything?
beautiful. Thank you. I did
Wait a
also.
second. Yeah, I
I
covered
did
my
want to mention.
thing.
I remembered something I wanted to mention. The kids are also assigned a mentor, so that's not their site supervisor. A mentor usually is a faculty teacher or someone on the committee that's assigned to them throughout the 4 weeks. And what that person does is visit them one time at their internship. And then there's also a journal entry we ask to get done once a week. There's usually a question or reflection type, piece. What was the most challenging task this week and why? The mentor will read that in the portal and respond back, so that there's a relationship there. And we're also keeping an eye, making sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. So there's a mentor assigned too. I think I didn't mention that before. I think that's really it. I was going to play, if you've already seen it, I was going to play the video montage some kids did last year. But before I do that, if anyone has any questions about it or anything I can answer. Yeah.
She tried to email, it said in some of the steps to follow in self-design. So she was going to email the facility and the director. And she did that. And then she just like to customize the first paragraph. And then we don't know if it went because it kicked us out of the whole site. How do we know if, do you get a confirmation that yes, your email went, or what the email email actually says?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure. So for self-design, the steps really need to be, wherever she wants to intern at, make contact with that person. Okay. Did she send them the form?
They spoke to you.
Okay.
And now apparently they need to set themselves up in the portal.
Okay. So we can speak after, but have the company, we'll talk after, because the company usually will get a call from me once I get their form. So I have to know what company that is, because usually I get the form, I make a phone call, make sure they're a legitimate company. After I speak to them, then I'll give them credentials into the system. So I don't know if they haven't received credentials. I just kind of have to know a little bit more about it. So after, I'll be in the attendance office. If you want to stop by, we'll kind of figure it out, what happened there. Okay. Yeah.
So you mentioned earlier that the date for graduation is set. Is that going to move with snow days?
Mm-mm.
No. So it's Monday the 15th, correct?
Yes. The state of Connecticut changed the law. The law used to be that you could not award a diploma before the 180th day of school, which is why it always moved.
So it's going to be, unless they can move it for rain, but they can move it inside.
Well,
It's going to be Monday the 15th at 5, right?
It's going to be Monday the 15th, but the first step would be to go to Tuesday the 16th to remain outside.
Right. But that we won't know until the day of.
Right. And that decision will be made, I would say, probably no later than 2 o'clock that day. But as the one who prepares to go inside just in case, I don't wish that on anybody. So we will push it back a day before going inside on the same day. It does not, no, the law changed, it does not move. Meaning, we can set it for the 15th and not have to worry. As I said, previously, we could not award a diploma before the 180th day of school, which is why it moved.
But if we have excessive snow days, will we go into April break then?
That's a whole separate thing in terms of the number of days for the school year. Graduation will not move from the 15th.
Is graduation day set?
The seniors will not come back after the 15th.
Or 16th.
It depends if I'm on a spiteful mood. I may require them to come back and attend class. School continues, yes. Yes. And actually, why that is possible, if you will, is because look at the last couple of years, all but a couple of kids have been on internships. So it's not as if they needed additional class meetings. And for the kids who remain, more often than not, it has been project-based, because it's a whole different instructional model when you've got a few kids in the class. So yes, seniors, but again, I don't know why mood's going to be that day, okay? But seniors will be done at graduation, whether it be the 15th or the 16th. I don't think the state will change back.
Did I understand correctly that all the decisions between matching the kids with those offering the internships will be done by the committee, and the employers or offering the internships don't have any say?
That's correct. So that's correct. So how it works, they do have a little bit of say, so I'll explain that. So the month of February, the committee usually sits down the first or second week. We go through all our data. And then what will happen is we will send a note through the portal, to the student. You are placed at this place. Some of the host sites will request an interview, about 50%. So then that note will basically say to the student, you have been placed tentatively at this place. Please note, you need an interview by this date. I can tell you 99.999% of the time, the host is always happy. I think I had one student in the almost 4 years I've been here, it didn't work out. It was a miscommunication. He actually did not even want to work at this particular place. But about 50% will require a final interview with the student. And the student will know, we'll let them know. And then we do offer for those students, I'll send an email if they want to do a mock interview with me or Mrs. Carroll before they meet with the company. Some kids have taken us up on that offer just to kind of go through everything. We'll do that as well. Yeah. Go ahead.
I'm sorry if I missed this. What date is the list of actual existing internships available versus?
There, it's available now. So I send out a preliminary, because every day I'm hoping to get more and more. So I sent out a preliminary list, I think a week and a half ago.
I saw that.
Yeah, it doesn't have the descriptions yet, but at least it's something so you kind of know what we preliminary have. I'm hoping by December 17th to have quite a bit more. So there's additional, just, every day I get a little bit. And then as soon as it's in the portal, by the way, it's active. So every time I add something, the student can see it. So if I add anything after December 17th, I always send an email to the student saying, hey guys, look, I added another one, so it gets their attention.
Okay. But the ones who want to self-design, they'll have a pretty good idea of what is available
Yes.
in case there's something.
Right, exactly. And that was the reason of sending it. Yeah.
Just with the timing, there's no way to, you have to either pick self-design or this go with the list. You can't go with the list and see what you get.
Like I was saying, we'll probably extend the self-design till mid-January, I'm thinking. So, the kids that, you'll see the list December 17th. You basically have from now, or, you have the list now, technically. You have until now, until, let's say, January 14th to really make a decision. I tell kids, if you're still up in the air what you want to do, to pick the 10 off the list, especially before the interview with us. Let's say your self-design, you haven't nailed it down just yet, and you interview with us, the first week in January, pick the 10 self-design, let us know in the internship you might have a self-design at this place, because it still has to be reviewed by us to make sure it's okay. Or they can just wait until, the last week of January to interview with us. But, now is definitely the time to start looking at self-design. Yeah.
The committee, members of the committee, and they're members from the community as well as the staff who've been involved in this program for years, are constantly beating the bushes looking for, and again, I use the word intentionally, valid opportunities for our kids. Because we're placing 300 kids, the quicker we know, how many kids need us to place them versus they put something together and have proposed it, the better it is for all the other kids. So that's why we want, as soon as possible, but reasonably, to know how many people need us to place them.
Right. Yeah.
Sorry if I missed that. How many hours per week is it okay? It's distributed over different days.
It is okay. So, typically it's 5 hours a day, but it is okay if one day is 6 hours, one day is 4 hours. So the first week, it starts on a Tuesday, is 20 hours. So it's okay if it's distributed differently. Obviously, the second week is actually 20 hours too because Memorial Day, and then the last week is 20 hours, so we end on a Thursday. So the third week would be 25 hours. But we are perfectly okay with it just, being distributed differently. I typically tell host sites 9 to 2 so they understand, many of our kids have, after-school activities during that time. And there will be in the portal, so every week the kids also fill out how many hours they worked, and that's sent to via email through the portal, sent to the host site, and they check off on that at the end of the week. So that's how we verify hours. Any other questions?
If you try out self-designs, is that opening the window or the door for you to then contact the company? So if it's a small company that says, okay, I can handle you, but I don't want the high school then knocking down their door, as you say, beating down the bushes to try and place other kids.
No, we're not. I would.
You don't contact the company and say, well, gee, you're willing to take
No.
one, can take 3 more.
No. There will be an email sent the next year. They'll be on our list asking if they want to participate and host and not self-design. We do that. And if they choose to do that, they can basically, click renew in their email and, put it in. And some do, which is great. And others would prefer to keep it self-design, only want to do it with the kids they know. Yeah. No, but I would not call a person and be like, oh, you're taking one. Can you? No. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. If it's okay, I'm just going to play the video. The other thing too, Since we are still looking for internships, if you have any friends, family, colleagues that you can think of that might have something to offer, please let me know. Okay, thank you.
Are you under time constraints?
What's that?
Are you under time constraints? Because the video was 3.5 hours. We'll break for lunch and then we'll finish the rest of it.
Here it is. I was looking for the audio.
What's that?
No, it's audio.
Very good.
I'm Chase Pellegrini, and I'm interning at Grace Farms Foundation in the Marketing and Communications Department.
My name's Turner Ives, and I'm working at Roan.
I'm AJ Riccozzi, and I'm a counselor at Camp Playland.
So my name is Matthew Challand, and I'm an intern at Bartlett Arboretum.
I'm Megan Mitchell, and I'm interning at This Old House.
My name is Delaney Kleopkoff.
And what's your internship?
I work at Camp Playland.
Greg Farley. And what's your internship?
I'm interning at the Norwalk Seaport Association.
I'm Samantha Corticas.
I'm Jem Garai.
And what's your internship?
We're interning at Earth Place Harbor Lodge.
What's a typical work day look like?
Typical work day, it varies day to day. Some days I'll be weeding at the garden right in front. Other days I'll be helping out with the second grade classes that come in. I'll help them with the microscopes, looking at pollen, identifying bees and other pollinators. And, yeah.
What does a typical work day look like?
We get here around 9 a.m. Sit on those couches. We have probably a list of 4 or 5 tasks on an Excel sheet that we need to work on every day. And so we kind of just rotate between those, take a short lunch break at some point, and then get back to work.
My day-to-day, so usually I walk into the Stanford office at around 9, and I have like a little cubicle set up, and then I work on like the most recent project I was just given.
And what are the goals at Camp Playland?
Basically, it's the summer warm-up, so we're just getting kids that just graduated from preschool, and we're trying to have fun with them all day.
What's the most rewarding part of your internship?
I really like that I get to see all the behind-the-scenes stuff, because I've been coming here and using the library and just doing homework and following the Instagram and like little things like that, and then to actually like see how that all works behind the scenes and what people are actually doing to make that all possible is really interesting to me.
Would you say it's rewarding?
Yeah, definitely, because a lot of the waters we test is the waters that we use, like the Norwalk Harbor for recreational use. And it's just important to keep that water clean and just basically make sure it's safe for everyone.
What's the most rewarding part?
Seeing the kids smile and just knowing like you're making their day better, making them happy.
The Seaport Association will send kids out on boats to the island. Just like they get like subsidized by the Fish and Wildlife Service, because a lot of the kids like have never gone out with boats and stuff. So it was really cool to see that.
So what's your favorite part of the internship?
My favorite part is getting to grow your own stuff and learning how to garden. Honestly, I didn't really know much about gardening, and now I've learned a lot, and I want to make my own garden myself one day. So,
would you say it's rewarding?
Yeah, I would say it's rewarding because I'm trying to figure out what I want to do after college. So it's really nice being in like a classroom setting, and she really lets me like work with the kids a lot. So I would say it's rewarding.
Would you pursue this as a career, do you think?
Possibly. I'm not sure what I want to do, but I would definitely consider it.
And would you pursue this as a career?
Yes, actually. I got into the design school at the school that I'm going to, and I had no idea what brand marketing would be like. But now that I'm doing it, it's a career that interests me a lot, and I would probably pursue in the future.
Yeah, I would say yes, because I like the creative side. And I like I like the marketing too, like working together.
And do you like working for a boss?
Yeah, especially when he's a good boss, not too mean.
Do you like working under a boss?
absolutely. When it's our boss, she's fantastic. I think it really depends on the scenario, but here at the Gospel Garden, I think we all enjoy working under a boss.
What's your favorite memory so far?
Probably when one of the kids caught a fish. It was his first fish he ever caught, and he was so excited.
I would say our first meeting with one of the clients, because it was really interesting to see how they work together, and I didn't expect it to go like that.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
That was like the first or second day?
Yeah.
I would say that my favorite memory so far is during the first weekly team meetings, and during the first meeting I kind of thought that I would just be like sitting in the corner and not really doing anything. But everyone was asking about all of the work that they've been having me doing and sort of like bringing me into the full conversation, which I really appreciated, and it really did make me feel like I'm a valuable part of the team here, even though I'm only here for a month and I'm a high school intern.
It's produced by Katie Johns, Campbell Slasic, and Tyler Corticus last year. So I think they did a great job. It is. So the other thing our website is so deep in everything, but I always have information, not just on the portal, but under school counseling, students, 12th grade, our whole website is there. And I always put dates there, I put forms, I put everything on this website. And we also have some great photos from last year and also videos from the last 3 years. So I'll send out another email, but I encourage everyone to just, check out our website, because the kids actually update it with photos and videos every year. So it's a great website. I'm really proud of it.
Are you showing this to all the kids, or is it just optional for them to sign?
I actually sent the link to the kids out. It's if they read their email. But what I'm thinking of doing is actually maybe putting on some of the TVs around school and rotating it with the one from 2018, which is a really well-produced one too, just so the kids see it. Just because it is, it's hard if you don't know where the website is. But I constantly, like every time I send an email, I usually have a link. Check this out. But and we also, so every year I have about 2 to 3 interns that intern with me, and they go out and they create videos and photos, and then they present it at our reception, which will be the last day of the internship, 5 o'clock, and they'll actually play this video for parents and students and host sites. Yeah. So that's it. So if there's any other questions, feel free. I'm in the attendance office. Stop by, or you can give me a call. That's it. Okay. Thank you. I'm just going to get out of this. Okay. Do you want the mouse? My mouse? I'll leave it here for you if you want. Or you're okay?
I don't need the mouse.
Okay.
No. I'll just open this up. What did she say? F5. There we go. All right. I'm supposed to use this. Okay. Hi, everybody. How's everybody doing? How's our anxiety level after all that information? Dates, portals, applications, interviews, right? Yeah, they do such an amazing job at this school. Basically everything they do, but this program is stellar. So, and they really, one thing I want to say, they really shepherd the kids through this, okay? And I feel like this is one of the opportunities where you can kind of say, manage it, right? You know that they're going to shepherd these kids through it. Everybody's talking about it. The kids are really motivated to do these internships. So it's one of those opportunities where you can kind of let go and let them kind of manage it. So that's another great thing about it. With the time we have remaining, I'd like this to be as useful for you all as possible. So I want this to be more of a dialogue than a monologue. So feel free to raise your hand in between what I'm saying and ask questions, okay? All right. Remember that? They were so cute, right? But we thought that was endless, right? And then suddenly it's over and you got this. And that's where we are now, right? Too many parents make life harder for their children by trying too zealously to make it easier for them. Okay? Have any of you seen Mark Brackett? He's the guy from Yale University. He developed a program for emotional intelligence called the Ruler Program. They use it here in New Canaan. I heard him speak. He's a phenomenal speaker if you ever get the opportunity. And he said, when I was young, my parents did not particularly care if I was happy, right? And I thought about that and I said, oh my gosh, that was my experience, right? Now this is light years ago, right? But that doesn't mean they were bad parents. It just means that their focus was on making us independent. That when they ushered us out into the world, and for many in my generation, we were first generation college goers, so this was a big deal in our families, right? And off we went to college. They felt like their job was to make us capable of managing ourselves in the big world, right? If we were happy, that was fantastic, okay? That has, over the last 20 to 30 years, significantly shifted, where parents now feel it is their responsibility to make their kids happy. Would you guys agree with that? That you feel like that's your responsibility to make sure your kids are happy, right? It's not our responsibility. Happiness has become the goal. Unfortunately, it's just another emotion. It's like sadness and fear and anger and shame and guilt. Happiness is built into our system to let us feel what it's like to feel joy, happiness, connectedness, right? Seek pleasure. But it's not the end goal, right? Actually, we are optimal as human beings when we are in a period of what is called contentment. Okay? That is neither too happy nor too sad. Content. Okay? But happiness has become the goal, and we feel like it's our goal for our kids. Let's talk about the reality of college applications. Okay? I was going through and updating this presentation, which I've given in the past, and I was online looking at things, and of course, when you when you Google college applications, what comes up? Felicity Huffman and Lori Loughlin, right? We're not going to talk about them, okay? And at the same time, that is an extreme reaction to what's going on in the world, okay? So yeah, we can sit here and say, well, gosh, you know, we would never do that. Scale that down a little bit, and we're all doing a version of that, okay? But here's the reality about college acceptance rates of the name brand, just a sample of name brand universities. Harvard, 5% acceptance rate. Northwestern, that's pretty high at 13%, right? Notre Dame, 9%. NYU, 8%, and that's across all their campuses, not just the main campus. Those are pretty low numbers, right? And with the advent of the Common App, applications have soared. All universities are seeing a major increase because it's so much easier to just click a button. You do it once, maybe there's a supplementary essay, no big deal, get it in. So all of these colleges are seeing an uptick in their application numbers, but they only have a certain number of beds. Okay? So their acceptances can't really change all that much, but their applications have gone up. So the chances of getting into these name brand schools has gone down. Okay? Not to say that our kids aren't more capable and competent than they were even 5 years ago. It just means that everybody's able to apply now, and there's lots of capable and competent applicants. This causes a lot of stress in families, right? What are some of the reasons that this process is so stressful? Early decision, early action. So everything is pushed up, right? So no longer is it like these January dates. Some kids know by Christmas and want to know by Christmas where they're going to school. That puts a lot of pressure, and it just moves that all up when these kids are, you know, still struggling junior year to find the bathroom, right? I mean, so we are putting demands on our kids earlier and earlier and earlier, and they're not necessarily able to manage those better. The competition, as we just saw. Peer pressure. Some kids make pacts in their friend groups that they're not going to talk about where they're applying to school, right? Because there's so much pressure. Parental expectations, high stakes testing, right? The SAT and the ACT. Thankfully, a lot of schools are going to test optional, but we're still not at a point where people feel confident not sending in an SAT or an ACT, right? So that's going to take time to shift. Resume building or hyper scheduling, right? These kids have schedules like heads of state. It's unbelievable. They don't have time in their day to relax. AP monsters, right? Some kids I know that I work with are taking 5 AP courses. That's insane. It's insane. The amount of work in these AP courses. I have a lot of kids that go from New Canaan High or Wilton High or Darien High, and they go off to college and they say, what do they say? College is easier, right? This is insane. Selective thinking, right? There's only 20 schools that people think of. And if you don't get into one of those 20 schools, was it really worth it, all that work? I don't know. And perfectionism. Perfectionism is on the rise. More and more kids identify themselves as perfectionists, and anxiety is what comes along with perfectionism. High school students have more anxiety symptoms and are twice as likely to see a mental health professional as teens in the 1980s. It's from a 2018 Child Mind Institute. A recent World Health Organization study of 14,000 first-year college students in 8 countries, and these are all developed countries, right? 35%, that's over 1/3, struggled with mental health issues. 21% met criteria for major depressive disorder. 18.6 met criteria for generalized anxiety disorder. And these numbers greatly exceed the resources of most college counseling centers. Our college counseling centers are inundated with kids coming in, and they have to triage, right? So if your kid goes in and is struggling, they're going to say, are you suicidal? If you're not, come back in 6 months, right? And a lot of times in university towns, surprisingly, there aren't a lot of outside resources. So even if you are able to access a resource outside in the community, there just aren't resources there, right? Sometimes colleges are in these beautiful remote places. Well, that's great for pictures. It's not great for mental health care, okay? So that's the situation. Anybody have any questions about that so far? Thoughts, comments, concerns? Are you more anxious now than when I started talking? Yeah. I want to tell you a little story about a friend of mine. Some years ago, went back to school. She and I went back to school about the same time, and we were called returning students. That's what they call the old people that go back to school after a big chunk of time for a second career. And she went to a little school up in New Haven. I think it's called Yale. You might have heard of it, right? And she was in a program, and these were all graduate students. And she was in one of these big classes, and they have these machines, I think they're called top hats or hi hats now, where you can, the professor can ask a question of the class, you put in the answer, and it feeds all the answers right into a computer system, right? So it was a statistics class, and the professor asked 3 questions. Your sex, male or female, your age, and your GRE score for your most recent GRE score. GRE is the graduate. It's like the graduate equivalent of the SAT, okay? You need it to get into graduate school. 200 students, all accepted students at Yale University. Okay, keep that in mind. Fed all their information in. The next class, she comes back and she's got a little graph. She's got one bar on the graph that shows the actual information which she got from the admissions office, and then the reported information. Only 5 of those students, my friend being one of them, reported their actual GRE score. Every other one of them, the other 195, inflated their score by at least 5 points. These are students that are in Yale University. They're in. That's the madness that we're dealing with, okay? So when you go to cocktail parties and everybody's talking about, oh, senior year, that's tough. Where are your kids applying? How'd they do on their SAT? When you hear that number, you're going to inflate it, okay? Because that's what's happening. People are so pressured to succeed, and success has become completely based on numbers, which is no indication of how your kid is actually doing in life. It's just a number. But we all get sucked into this game, okay? So what can we do? Anybody read this book, Frank Bruni's book? Where You Go Is Not Who You'll Be. It's an amazing book. If you get the chance to look through it, it should be on every family's shelf that's going through the college admission process. Acceptance at an elite, or what we call name brand school, has become the conclusive measure of a young person's worth, an incontestable harbinger of the accomplishments or disappointments to come. The admissions game is too flawed to be given such credit. Okay? 33,000 applications, 3,000 seats. How can they possibly go through a thorough search of those 33,000 candidates? They can't. It's a completely random process, right? It has to be. Here's some things that you can do. Model the behaviors you would like to see in your kid. And that is primarily managing your own emotional experience, okay? Validate, validate, validate. Does anybody want to take a guess at what validation means? We hear this word a lot. You're not validating me. I feel invalidated. Anybody want to take a guess at what it means to validate truly? An affirmation? Yep. Anybody else? You're listening? Yep, that's a big part of it. Ultimately, it means that you let that other person know that you understand something about what they are experiencing. And validation is the opposite of problem solving, okay? As parents who are hyper concerned with our kids being happy and succeeding, rush into problem solving way sooner than we ought to. Okay? The developmental goal of adolescence is for kids to individuate and separate from parents. They're going to be looking to their peers more for feedback than from parents. That is appropriate and necessary. Now, some of us can get our feelings hurt, right? One day you're their best friend or the center of their universe, and then the next day they don't even want to talk to you. Don't take that personally. That's what they need to do. They need to get ready to be out in the world. So we want to foster that. Obviously, we want to talk to our kids. But when we rush into problem solving every time that they are upset, it diminishes their ability to tolerate any discomfort they might feel when things aren't going well. And then when you're not there, what do? Right? So think about little kids, right? Say you have a couple kids, little kids, and they're playing at your house, and they're playing nicely and quietly, and what do? 2 kids playing nicely, playing quietly. What does mom, dad, or caregiver do? Leave. Exactly, right? 2 kids playing nicely, all of a sudden there's a scuffle. You took my toy. That's mine. What does mom, dad, or caregiver do? What's that? Rushes back in, exactly. Hey, what's going on? Tell me what this, you do this, you do this. Problem solve, problem solve, problem solve, right? What do the kids learn from that? Take somebody else to solve my problems, and I don't necessarily mind that. Yep. Exactly. And so if I feel a little bit uncomfortable, like I get angry or I get sad or I get scared, if I just squawk a little, somebody's going to come in and take care of that for me, right? We need to shift that paradigm. Kids are playing nicely, that's when we give them our attention, right? We sit, we watch, we say, that is fantastic, that is the best Lego castle I've ever seen in my life, right? You spend a little bit of time because that's the behavior that you want to reinforce, right? Reinforce means I want to increase that behavior, the likelihood of that behavior. When they're scuffling, stay away. Obviously, the rule in our house was no blood, no foul, right? So obviously, if it's a situation that looks dangerous, you will go in and problem solve, but for the rest of the time, let them work it out, okay? They learn to manage their distress, because it usually goes away pretty quickly. Kids are pretty resilient. They'll work through it. Or they'll come and get you, which is a skill in itself, asking for help, right? What you have to do is manage your own distress when your kid is uncomfortable. Okay? So validating, when that kid comes to you and says, Johnny took the red Lego and that's the one that I needed. Instead of saying, well, let me go in there and talk to Johnny, what might you say? Yeah. Ugh. Johnny. That stinks. Right. What, yeah, and what's the kid going to say? Yeah, it really stinks. Yeah. You want some juice? Yeah. Juice would be good. And we're done. Much different message than rushing in, telling Johnny, give it back, ba. The teachable moment is not in you going in and problem solving, but rather saying, it's okay. What you're feeling, I get it. I would feel that too. That's validation. And a little bit of distraction. Let's have some juice. Okay? The average emotion, if it is not fed into, lasts 7 to 15 seconds. Okay? What feeds into an emotion going on for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks is our thoughts and people feeding into it. Okay? So if you don't feed into it, it's going to go up and go down. Emotions are like waves. And that's what we want to happen, right? Now, what's the 15, 16, 17-year-old version of that? The non-Lego version of that, right? Yeah, I got an 85 on an essay. 85 is really bad these days, I guess, right? I'd be thrilled if my kid came home with an 85, but yeah, same thing, right? That's like Johnny took. So what are we usually going to do? Oof. Let's email the teacher, right? Are you able to get extra credit? Can you do something to change that? Are they going to allow you to rewrite that, right? We go into problem-solving mode. What might we say? Anybody want to take a guess? We could say 85 is good. That might seem, I feel the same way. I'd be like, yeah, you got an 85, but that's my family, right? But for high-achieving kids, 85 is not good, right? So that's invalidating, right? So trying to talk them out of what they had expected can feel invalidating. So what might you say that's more validating? Problem solving. How can we say, now you might get there at some point, right? But first we want to validate. What might you say?
How do you feel about that?
You could say that, yeah? Most kids don't like that, especially, it sounds a little social worky, right? How do you feel about that? How did that make you feel, right? But you're on the right track. Ooh, you can maybe say how you might feel about that, right? Or,
Feel sad that you're sad about that, and then I could probably go into the, why don't you reach out to your teacher?
Yeah, we could say, or we could validate, gosh, I know you worked so hard on that essay. That must feel crummy. That must suck. Right? And then just stay with that and see where the kid goes, right? Now, once the kid has calmed down a little bit, then you go into problem solving because you want to do problem solving collaboratively, okay? You want to help them, just as they're trying to do in the internship program, build skills, right? That's our goal. So all of those moments are the opportunity for you to work collaboratively with them in problem solving, not giving them suggestions, okay? The reality is that by 15, kids' personalities, skills, I mean, not skills, but personality and character structure is pretty much set. Okay? So that's good news and bad news, right? Good news is they're done cooking, right? Bad news is they are what they are, right? But we have to accept that. Okay, stay away from problem solving, rescuing, fixing as much as possible. Help your kids set reasonable and attainable expectations for him or herself. Oof, this is a tough one. Okay? I work with a lot of kids who have really, really rigorous academic schedules plus extracurriculars, as I said. I mean, these schedules make me want to crawl into bed. They're so challenging. And they come to me and they're super anxious, right? And it's getting in the way. And they want to do something about it. And I say, that's fantastic. We can do this. Anxiety is very treatable. And I say, you know, what are you willing to do? Tell me about your schedule, I'll say. Well, I'm taking 5 AP courses and I'm on varsity lacrosse, and then I'm in National Charity League, and I'm also work with an organization that goes to Haiti 3 times a year to work in a hospital, and then I'm in my church choir, and yeah, oh, and then it goes on and on and on, right? It's all for the resume. So I say, okay, look, would you be willing to drop down in one of those AP courses, just one, right? Just to lighten your load a little bit. I can't. I can't, because then I won't get into the good school that I want to, being one of those name brand schools, okay? So we, as parents, have to help our kids set reasonable and attainable expectations, okay? It's great to have goals, but expectations should be things that people can achieve, okay? And we have to be willing to get off of the treadmill that says all kids have to go to name brand schools, all kids have to do extracurriculars, all kids have to take AP courses. We have to be willing to let go of that and help our kids set reasonable expectations. And schedule time each week to catch up about the college process, and then talk about other things the rest of the week. What's the number one thing we talk to our kids about? Anybody? School. What's the number one thing our kids don't want to talk about? School, right? It has worked very well with the folks, the families that I work with, that you set time during the week where you're going to meet as a family and go through the college process, okay? And then the rest of the week, you can check in about how the kid is doing, but the constant day-to-day trickle of questions really wears these kids down, okay? So if you can schedule a meeting with them, that way they can be prepared, everybody can be prepared. Maybe you do it at a time that's relaxed, make a cup of tea, do it in a comfortable part of the house. Anything you can do to not make this a constant daily struggle, right? Okay. Factors that influence our ability to manage our emotions. Sleep, huge. I know there's a big push in town to get the school start time pushed back. There is ample evidence to support more sleep will reduce anxiety and stress. That's for all of us. This isn't just for your kids. This is for everybody. Kids, adolescents need 8 hours of sleep a night. Adults need 7 to 8. Younger kids need 10. Okay? There's an epidemic of lack of sleep in our country. I would say only about 10% of people in the US get enough sleep. And we're not doing enough to attend to it. Eating, you really want to monitor your kids' eating in the sense that they are neither restricting nor using food to comfort themselves, right? A lot of kids, a lot of adolescents, particularly girls, have disordered eating, if not an eating disorder, but food is often used as a method of coping, either by trying to gain a sense of control by restricting what you take in, or by binging on unhealthy food to kind of self-soothe. Exercise, most of our kids get enough exercise because a lot of them play sports, but exercise doesn't necessarily mean that you have to play a varsity sport. It just means that you've got to be active every day. Okay? Mood-altering drugs. Caffeine is a mood-altering drug. Sugar is a mood-altering drug. And nicotine is a mood-altering drug. Okay? All of those things should be used, nicotine not at all, preferably, caffeine in moderation and sugar in moderation, okay? Interesting thing going back to sleep, and caffeine plays into this. If there is a variance of 3 hours in your sleep schedule, so for instance, if you normally go to bed at 11 during the week, and then on the weekend you go to bed at 2, because you went to a party or stayed up late, right? Which is a pretty common thing, or had a sleepover. You throw your body into jet lag, okay? A 3-hour variance in your sleep schedule throws you into jet lag. How long does it take to get out of jet lag? 5 days. So by you're just getting out of jet lag, and the next weekend you do it all over again. So our kids sometimes are virtually always in a state of jet lag, right? So when they get up and they say, oh my God, I'm so tired, it's true, because their body is in jet lag. So then what do? They go to Starbucks, as I did this morning, right? And you get a big cup of coffee, and then you start this treadmill, right? So if you are prone to anxiety, no more than 8 ounces of caffeinated beverages and no later than 1 o'clock in the afternoon, okay? Just a rule of thumb. Physical illness. Treat physical illness, right? So if you feel a cold coming on, take it slow. Stay in. Have a cup of tea. Have some soup, right? Attend to physical illness, get flu shots, wash your hands, all of those things, because any of these things that are not attended to make us more vulnerable to an extreme emotional reaction, okay? You know, when you're tired, you get cranky, you get irritable, more prone to crying, all of that. Attending to these basic needs helps to reduce the chance of us reacting ineffectively. Okay, ask yourself, would you be willing to take your kid off the hamster wheel to improve his or her mental health? Would you be willing to send your kid to a college no one has ever heard of if it was the right fit? And would you be willing to set limits on your kid's behavior even if your kid didn't like it? What if your child doesn't get into the school of his or her dreams? Go back to those statistics. My kid graduated a number of years ago from this fine institution, applied to 9 schools, got into 1. Rejected from all the others, okay? 1. Thank God it wasn't his first choice, but it was a school that he felt good about going to. 1. He had 1 choice, or take the year off and do a gap year, which we discussed, but rejection happens. This is real, okay? What do? Don't take it personally. And he's the one that told me this after we had all, gotten over our shock, not shock, but certainly sadness, fear too. They are not rejecting your kid. They are rejecting an application. They don't know your kid. Okay? This is not personal. This is numbers. Okay? So yes, you work very, very hard and you have your hopes set on specific schools. And if it doesn't work out, that is not a testament to you as a failure. You yourself are not a failure. The expectation failed, not you as a person, okay? So that's a big difference that I want you to take home today, if nothing else, that this is not a personal process. This is a random statistical game. And for some kids, it's going to work out great, and I am so, so happy when it does. And for a lot of kids, it doesn't work out. Yeah?
It sure does. Because these kids haven't put themselves out there as much as they have with scores and transcripts and extra, all that stuff.
Right,
so
right.
It's hard to interpret it otherwise.
Absolutely is. It's the hardest thing in life not to take things personally, right? Not just this process. But you've hit on something that's really important. So much of our value so much of the value that these kids feel is in their grades, their scores, their achievements, whether they get in the paper for, having made 3 goals. We want our kids to know, and this is our job as parents, that you are much more than your numbers, okay? And really, as a family, how do you honor and praise and celebrate successes that have nothing to do with a number? What are you doing to celebrate the successes that your kid has as a human being? Because once you get into college, no one cares what your SAT scores were. They are literally a moot point on December 15th. Okay? Think about that. If our whole value as a human being, I'm exaggerating here, is on a number, and that number is a moot point, that's a little scary to think about. So we have to help our kids feel successful, even if, like my older kid, every time he took the SAT, his test score went down. Imagine that. And God bless him, every time he came out, he said, Mom, this time I nailed it. Totally nailed it this time. And by the third time, we said, we should probably stop doing this. I don't think this is actually working, right? So, but this kid had so much more to build on than that number that, yeah, it was disappointing. These are all, I'm not saying that these are not disappointments in life, but it's not everything, right? So really, our job is to say, hey, that's great, you got a perfect score on your SAT, and I really loved the way you were talking to Grandma the other day. That was really amazing. Right? So, not taking things personally, particularly this process. Failure is the non-performance of something due, required, or, in the case of college applications, expected. For many kids, as you said, college rejection is the first failure that they've experienced. And failure is not the end of your life, it's an important part of life. This is something I came across. This guy, Sean, I don't know how to pronounce his name, Aker, I guess. Write down on a piece of paper 3 instances where you felt that you grew in your life, right? And he's done this, he wrote a whole book about it. When I conduct this exercise with people all over corporate America and even elsewhere, 90% of the respondents' answers are related to some highly stressful period of change. Never has he heard a vacation mentioned as a great growth moment. Okay? So failure sucks, and it's an opportunity to grow. And it's how we manage the failures that shows who we are as a person. Not that we failed, because we fail every day, right? I fail every day when I get up and say I'm going to go to the gym and I don't go. That's a failure, right? Because I set it as an expectation and I don't go. Does it mean I'm a failure? No. So setting expectations that are reasonable and seeing failure as an opportunity for growth. Last slide. If your emotional abilities aren't in hand, if you don't have self-awareness, if you're not able to manage your distressing emotions, if you can't have empathy and have effective relationships, no matter how smart you are, you're not going to get very far. This is Daniel Goleman, who was one of the first people to talk about the idea of emotional intelligence in popular culture. So it had been studied for a while, but he was the first to kind of bring it to the New York Times bestseller list. Okay. Questions? Comments? Worries? Make sense? The other thing I would say is to support one another. Find your tribe. Okay? We tend to get pretty siloed, especially during these times, because our neighbors, other people in this room are seen as the competition, right? And I would really encourage you, you only need 1 or 2 good friends that you can call and say, my kid just got rejected from 8 schools. I don't know what I'm going to do, right? This really sucks and blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
Okay, so let's ask that. What if the first response is a rejection?
Right.
What do we say? I mean, do you have just a one?
Yeah, especially if it's like the early decision.
Yeah.
This is the way they pick this school,
Yep.
this school they want to go to.
Yep. Validate. Sit and listen. Sit and listen. Sucks. This really sucks. Let's go get sushi. Have something planned. Not a big party. You don't want to, go overboard, but let's do something because we feel yucky right now. You want to go get your nails done? Let's go get our nails done. This sucks. The message that we want to send our kids is you can be sad and still function, right? Sadness is just an emotion like every other one. Right? And sadness is there for a reason. Sadness is hardwired into our systems to tell us what is important. If we didn't have sadness, in our lives, we wouldn't know which relationships are important, which jobs are important, which, which Netflix series, when they go off the air, we feel sad because it was an important part of our lives, right? It's there for a reason. So feeling sadness, kind of leaning into it, but not changing. We're going to get up tomorrow. We're going to go to school. And we're going to get through. I feel really badly for these kids. I didn't touch on it at all, but everything is on social media now, and it is just so much harder because all you see is the good stuff, right? Used to be my mom used to say, nobody looks like their Christmas card, right? But now it's nobody looks like their Facebook or Instagram. And it's so true. You're only seeing a very manicured, curated piece of people's lives. And it seems like everybody's getting everything that they want. I'm here to tell you, I worked at Silver Hill clinically for 10 years. I've been in private practice for almost that long. No, longer, actually. And there's a lot of pain and suffering that's going on in our communities that nobody talks about, right? So if we were able, and that's what I mean, if your kids just have a couple of friends that they can really be real with, and you can as well, that's all they need, right? Because the rest of the time, we live in a community that appearances are super important, and that's really hard for kids, right? So at least at home, we want to make home a place where they can cry and get snotty and rage at the world and scream, and it's okay. And we're going to be okay. That's the message. That's the bottom line. This sucks, and you're going to be okay. And then do whatever you need to do to manage your own anxiety, right? Bottle of Chardonnay. Fully support it. Not really. I favor tequila. Any other questions? I have one last thing I want to read to you but I don't want to cut out any questions. Just came through on my email. Yeah.
So how about, so manage your own anxiety?
Yeah.
Yes. How about, managing the rest of your household?
Yeah.
Through this whole thing.
Right.
Your spouse, your other children.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yes, share with them all these ideas, but I feel responsible for some.
Yeah. So everybody's going through their own thing, and everybody has feelings about, especially if it's your first kid going off to college, right? There's all that. Oh, my kid is almost 26, and I'm still like, oh, I wish you were home. So yeah, everybody has their own feelings. You, as the mom, you're not responsible for anybody else's emotional experience. And the best thing you can do for your family is regulate your own emotions, right? Or talk about what you're feeling, right? Gosh, I feel really sad today because of blah, blah, blah. Or, ooh, I was so angry today. Use those emotion words so that emotions aren't scary, horrible things that nobody should feel or talk about. But you are not responsible for everybody's emotional reaction. Again, we need to allow people to learn how to manage their own emotions so that when we're not there, they can still manage, right? We don't want to make ourselves indispensable. You really want to work yourself out of your job as a mom so that they can go off and manage. And then you can have this really, really delicious adult relationship with your kids because you don't have to manage them anymore, right? So really, during this stressful time or any stressful times, managing yourself will help everybody else. Because a lot of times moms, there's no dads left, the one dad left, moms are kind of set the emotional temperature for the house. And if that's the case, we really need to be mindful of how we set that temperature, right? Doesn't mean you have to be... You don't have to be stoic. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be, non-expressive. You can be very expressive. I'm Italian. It's very hard not to express myself. You just have to be effective. Any other questions, comments? Okay, I'll read this and then we will wrap up. So Jeff Bezos, our lovely friend that started Amazon, delivered the Princeton class of 2010 commencement speech. And this is just a portion of it. On one particular trip, I was about 10 years old. I was rolling around in the big bench seat in the back of the car. My grandfather was driving and my grandmother had the passenger seat. She smoked throughout these trips and I hated the smell. At that age, I'd take any excuse to make estimates and do minor arithmetic. I'd calculate our gas mileage, figure out useless statistics on things like grocery spending. I'd been hearing an ad campaign about smoking. I can't remember the details, but basically the ad said, every puff of a cigarette takes some number of minutes off of your life. I think it might have been 2 minutes per puff. At any rate, I decided to do the math for my grandmother. I estimated the number of cigarettes per day, estimated the number of puffs per cigarette, and so on. When I was satisfied that I'd come up with a reasonable number, I poked my head into the front of the car, tapped my grandmother on the shoulder, and proudly proclaimed, at 2 minutes per puff, you've taken 9 years off your life. I have a vivid memory of what happened, and it was not what I expected. I expected to be applauded for my cleverness and arithmetic skills. Jeff, you're so smart. You had to have made some tricky estimates, figure out the number of minutes in a year and do some division. That's not what happened. Instead, my grandmother burst into tears. I sat in the back seat and did not know what to do. While my grandmother sat crying, my grandfather, who had been driving in silence, pulled over onto the shoulder of the highway. He got out of the car and came around and opened my door and waited for me to follow him. Was I in trouble? My grandfather was a highly intelligent, quiet man. He had never said a harsh word to me, and maybe this was to be the first time. Or maybe he would ask that I get back in the car and apologize to my grandmother. I had no experience in this realm with my grandparents and no way to gauge what the consequences might be. We stopped beside the trailer. My grandfather looked at me, and after a bit of silence, he gently and calmly said, Jeff, one day you'll understand that it's harder to be kind than clever. What I want to talk to you about today is the difference between gifts and choices. Cleverness is a gift. Kindness is a choice. Gifts are easy. They're given. Choices can be hard. You can seduce yourself with your gifts if you're not careful, and if you do, it'll probably be to the detriment of your choices. Cleverness is a gift. Kindness is a choice. So when your kid is clever, wonderful. When your kid is kind, you throw a party. Good luck.
Thank you very, very much. Don't forget to sign up for the post-prom if you haven't signed up, but when I look around, I think we're all on this already.